Hi, LinkedIn family. Happy Thursday. So yesterday I covered with the No More campaign how domestic violence affected the workplace. And I kind of actually wanted to elaborate a little bit more on some of it because there is a huge thing and I really want to address it. And the thing is you never know what somebody is going through in the workplace. Um, and I have seen this happen. As an HR professional, obviously I may have information that a hiring manager or a manager on the workforce does not have. Employees feel comfortable coming to me with things such as they are a victim of domestic violence, but they may not feel as comfortable going to their manager telling them that. And I have obviously had to keep that confidential. And so you may not know that as a manager or as a coworker that this person is super sensitive to certain matters. It is very much like a veteran who has PTSD who may not be willing to share that information with their employer because they feel that they may be viewed as less. And so domestic violence survivors who have experienced extreme traumatic experiences and violence can suffer from PTSD themselves as well. And that can play into the workplace in a situation where things can trigger the PTSD and their performance may decline and so forth. And I wanted to bring that up because there are some similarities in this respect when it comes to how somebody can be triggered in PTSD in the workplace. Recently, probably within the past year, I can say that I've actually seen this in play. I had a female employee who had been domestically abused by her spouse. She did not realize what was going on in the workplace. She had been emotionally abused along with physically abused by her abuser. She had already left. Everything had been over. It had been several years since the abuse. She did suffer a form of PTSD. She thought she had it under control. She didn't think she had any triggers. I saw an authority figure start to berate her in front of everybody else. He did not know about her past. I will say, first off, I didn't necessarily agree with the fact that he was berating her in front of anyone else because I do believe in the praise in public, punish in private. But he did decide to call her out in front of everybody else in a tone that I would not have agreed with as an HR professional. And he really degraded her, and his tone of voice was just not in a manner that would be professional to me. What he didn't know was going on is that automatically triggered her into a PTSD moment. She immediately became defensive and started shutting down. From that point on, she heard nothing that he said. The only thing she could think of was either fight or flight, and she flew. She literally, as soon as the meeting was done, flew out that door and was gone out of work for the next 3 days. When she came back, she was a mess. She didn't know what was happening. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't want to be there. And she had no idea what had actually happened. Now, because I had witnessed this and because of my experience with domestic violence survivors and PTSD, I sat her down and I said, "Do you realize what happened?" And she's like, "No." She goes, "All of a sudden, I just felt this way." I said, "I know you've had therapy and I know your situation." I said, "Do you realize you were triggered?" She's like, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Do you realize the way he spoke to you is likely the way your abuser spoke to you, and that triggered you into the flight or fight?" I said, "And you chose to fly. You ran away." And I said, "And that's perfectly fine, and I understand that." I said, "Let's work on that." And she did not want the person, this manager, to know, that's what had happened. So I worked with her on that, and we came up with a plan to explain to what was going on. In the end, and that's something that I will do with any domestic violence survivor if they need a buffer between their employer or manager and themselves, because it is a subject that is very personal for a lot of us. Having to explain to somebody, "Hey, I'm sorry I was abused." Sometimes the words that you say mean more than what you think because of the words that have been said to me. Now, I will tell you that I do not blame anyone else for my abuse except for the person that did it to me. There are people who are not at that point. I have done the therapy for myself. I am in a much better place now than I was many years ago. but not everybody has reached that point. We're all in different stages in domestic violence. So for me, I can take somebody who talks to me in a tone that's not so favorable, or even in a tone that maybe my abuser talked to me in. I will fully admit, yes, I actually have been diagnosed with PTSD. Just as many of the veterans that I know on here with LinkedIn that I am connected with may have been from what they've experienced. It is a different type of PTSD than the PTSD that is associated with the military, but in the same respect, we all have triggers. I have actually been taught the coping skills and various things to help with it, but it still happens. I am honest and open with it, not with my employers, to be very honest. I'm also not as honest and open with the domestic violence with my employers until recently. Honestly, these videos are going to be very eye-opening for some of my employers who did not know about a lot of this stuff. But I was tired of being ashamed of it. It's not something that I should be ashamed of because it is not my fault. None of this is anyone's fault but the abuser's fault. And so I encourage anyone who has been a victim of domestic violence to understand that it is not your fault. There are people who can help you. There are people to support you. And that you are not alone in this fight. You may have had it happen 10 years ago. You're still not alone in this fight. There are many organizations out there that can help you. And as a matter of fact, I'll be very honest, I am actually one of those organizations. I have started my own nonprofit, Survivors Helping Others Hope, otherwise known as Show Hope. And it is a little bit different than many of the nonprofits that are out there. There are many nonprofits that look to help victims get out of the situation they're currently in. But after you're out of that relationship and you've been put into transitional housing or whatever, the services are done. The problem is many domestic violence survivors go through very similar patterns after they're out of those relationships. They either have a repeat cycle or they have no support outside of it, and they feel very alone and very isolated because of what they've been through. That's what my nonprofit deals with. It is a network of survivors to help other survivors through the things that we go through 10 years after the abuse stops. 10 years after we've moved on, 20 years after we've moved on. You know, I'm a 23-year survivor of domestic violence. I still have days where I go, what was I thinking? I still have days where I am trying to figure out what's going on. You know, I have points that trigger me on occasion. I've learned to be better. But not everybody's there. So I mentor people who are not where I am. And there are other people out there like me who want to mentor other domestic violence survivors. And in addition, we also help with monetary things we know there's things of education, housing, trying to get back on track, trying to break the cycles that are out there that happen when you are a survivor of domestic violence. Tomorrow will be my last post regarding the No More campaign and ending domestic violence. And then I will also be listing a variety of different organizations that can help. And mine will be one of them, although I do not have a website up currently because honestly, no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to get my website up and running. So that will be interesting. I'm trying my hardest, but I am just not that good at developing websites. I'm getting there, but slowly but surely. But in all honesty, if you are on LinkedIn and you are a manager, please be mindful. You do not know what anyone on your staff has been through or is going through. So if you keep that in mind, be kind. If you are complaining about what you see going on in the world, be the change you want to be in the world. If you want to see change, be the change. Live up to what you want to see in the world, because that's how I live my life. The fact of the matter is change happens here. It takes just one person to start change, but when we band together, it can happen. So guys, and ladies, have a happy Thursday. No more. Let's put an end to domestic violence. And remember, change happens here. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.